Planning Committee meeting. I'm Councillor John Ward and will be chairing the Planning Committee meeting today. On the top table, we have officers Julie Fox, Peter Kerrison, Helen Mellors and Dawn Matthews. I'll now read out the fire safety notice. We're not expecting a fire drill today, so the fire alarms, the fire alarm sounds, we will evacuate the building. There are 2 fire exits from this room. One is through the double doors where you came in, and the other door is to the right of the stage, which leads to an external fire escape. Please note that you should not use the lift in the event of a fire. In the event of an evacuation, we will meet to the left of the driveway at the main entrance to Thorpe Lodge. Members of the public are welcome to film proceedings as long as they are not disruptive to the conduct of the meeting. If anyone wishes to record the meeting, please identify yourselves now. Please can you all ensure your mobile phones and electronic devices are turned to silent. Councillors, please do not use your mobile phone whilst the committee is in session. We will have comfort breaks at various times throughout the meeting. If you must use your mobile, then please leave the room. However, you will appreciate that this could result in you not being able to vote on the matter under discussion at the time you leave the room. The order of business is as set out on the agenda. Members of the public can only speak if prior arrangements have been made in accordance with the Council's scheme of public speaking. The time allocated is a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker. Only people who have been registered to speak will be able to address the committee. The order will be as follows. The planning officer will present the application. Public speakers will then be asked to present their case, followed by questions from members of the committee to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. Council members who are not members of this committee will then be invited to speak for the allocated time of a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker. This will be followed by questions from members of the committee. Again, these questions should only be to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. The committee will then discuss and determine the application. Finally, there is no provision for members of the public to circulate documents, photographs, etc. at the meeting. Are there any questions before I open the meeting? Right, I so declare the meeting open. Declarations of interest from councillors, please. Councillor Karimi.
The first application is in Taverham. It's not particularly in my ward, but I was contacted by one of the neighbours initially and passed it on to Ken Kelly.
Thank you.
I don't know if I can vote on this or not.
Yes,
Sure.
that will be all right.
Okay.
Councillor Adams. Yes. Okay. No further declarations. Thank you. Apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've received apologies from Councillor Vincent and her substitute is Councillor Hempsall. And we also have apologies from Councillor Riley.
Thank you. The minutes of the meeting held on 13th of July for accuracy. Any comments, please? Okay, all in favour? Yes. Thank you. Are there any matters arising from those minutes?
Yes, please, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Beadle.
On page 8 of the 3 applications which were deferred, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3, they should have come to this meeting this morning, but I understand that there's not the appropriate officer to attend and therefore it's been postponed again till next month. And so, I think it's not very good when we can't actually get the right personnel to the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you. Those applications will come to the next meeting. Right, we'll move on to the applications then. The first one on page 12, 2022-0272, Sunnymead, Crown Road, Buxton. Ask Officer Kerrison to present to this case. Thank you.
I can't hear.
There we go. Starting with item number 1, we've got Sunnymead Crown Road in Buxton, which is a single dwelling located inside the development boundary. So it's on the western side of Buxton. Zooming into the site, it is adjacent to a building that was previously a care home. So you've got the main 2 buildings of that here. They have extant permission and they are under conversion into residential at the moment. So we've got 4 residential dwellings in this building and 4 residential apartments in this one. The proposed new dwelling is accessed via the same shared access and located to the west of these buildings, located here. As you will see from the Google Earth image here, there are some tree constraints on the site. So the western boundary has quite a lot of mature vegetation and trees on it, which has formed primarily a reason for refusal of an application for 2 dwellings on here last year, because it was a cramped development. So it's come back as a single dwelling. Again, coming in, this plan shows the site quite well and how big it is without those tree constraints on it. So, and then zooming into how the dwelling fits on the plot, it's sited relatively centrally. Single or double detached garage located to the south of it. These are the 4 dwellings within the converted building that are being brought forward next to it currently. Again, showing the trees around the site, there are existing dwellings to the south here. The primary residential garden will be to the north of the dwelling and to the west. Moving on to the detailed arboricultural information, this plan shows the potential overshadowing from the trees. So one of the considerations on the previous application was that the residential gardens would be too overshadowed and the dwellings, resulting in a substandard quality of residential provision. Whereas with only 1 dwelling on here, there is sufficient space outside of that shadowing area. Moving on to the next one, showing the root protection areas, and the proposed root protection fencing for the construction period shows there's sufficient space between the dwelling and the trees, so that there is no negative impact on that tree line boundary in this instance. Moving on to the dwelling itself, it's a relatively modest sized dwelling, 2 bedrooms, kitchen, living, lounge area. This is the front elevation, so this will be facing east. It won't be visible in the street scene because of the way it's tucked around behind the dwellings that are on Crown Road, but it will be visible in the sort of courtyard area in front of the 4 dwellings that are being converted out of the existing care home. This is the side elevation to the north, so this will face into the garden. Then on the south side, so this will be the side that abuts the existing residential dwelling, so there's no possibility of overlooking coming from there, with no windows on that side. Again, the long elevation, so that's the one looking at the tree-lined boundary to the west. And then the elevations of the garage, which again is located roughly on the southern boundary. So moving on to some photos looking into the site to bring it into context. This is the site access from the highway. The highway authority have been consulted, and because of the previous uses and previous permissions on here, they have no objection to an additional dwelling using this particular access. It served the care home. It's also had previous permission as a hotel, which would have been a much more intensive use than the dwellings that are coming off here at the moment. In addition to that, it will serve 9 dwellings in total with this one, which is the upper limit of what highways will approve under a private drive, but it's within their bounds of what they're happy with. This is the drive leading up to the 4 dwellings that are already approved, plus the one proposed here. Looking back again towards the highway, as you can see, the conversions are fairly close to occupation, and the parking areas out the front. And then swinging round, so that will be looking at the front elevation of the proposed new bungalow. Again, looking back towards the highway. The boundary in view here is with the dwellings that are on Crown Road, so the proposed garage will go roughly where my cursor is there. There's a decent boundary treatment in between the two and sufficient separation to avoid overshadowing and overlooking between the plots. And again, a wider view, and again, this is a particularly good view of those tree constraints and the significant vegetation that is on that western boundary as well. And again, another one of the south, and just a better view of the dwellings that line it and the site interior at the moment. So again, if I finish roughly there, the other reason for it bringing to committee is the site drainage. So as standard on a new dwelling, we would put a surface water drainage condition on, which is requiring compliance with sustainable drainage scheme of hierarchy. That's been proposed. The applicants are underway with that assessment. They're proposing a soakaway at present. They've done the infiltration testing and have shown that a soakaway will work. So we are just currently awaiting the detailed drainage design. So when on a standard on these, we put a condition requiring that information to come in prior to any construction above foundation level, but given the nutrient neutrality delay in this case, it's probably quite likely we'll get that in advance of any decision being made on the application. So that surface water condition would just change at that point from being a requirement for information to be submitted to a requirement to just comply with the scheme proposed. And we are expecting that quite shortly. So in summary then, the recommendation is to authorise the Assistant Director of Planning to approve, subject to conditions, including that drainage condition, to satisfy the sustainable drainage system methods and to address the requirements of nutrient neutrality.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions for the officer, please? Councillor Brutton.
Sorry. Good morning. Thank you for your opening remarks. Can you tell me, please, I've read this through and I went out to the site yesterday. I was looking unsuccessfully to find the house called Urania, where there are 2 trees already described as coming down. Can you show me pictures where they were, where they are, where they're relevant? Please.
Maybe, I think Councillor Beadle. Yeah, Beadle's too many on. That's it.
There we go. I don't have it on the map, so I'm not 100% sure which ones it is coming down. But avoiding too much speculation, if I whiz through the photos here, there is some gaps in the, where's the one I'm looking for? There's some gaps in the boundary vegetation there along, so that would be the southern boundary of the site by the look of it at the moment. But as I said, I'm not 100%.
Are we saying he's
sure.
already taken them down then?
They could have done, but again, I don't know that.
Okay. Not a very happy situation as far as me and our love of trees is concerned. The other question, could you kindly go back to the photograph which showed the view back to the Crown Road with the for sale notice in the front garden, as it were?
Oh, yeah. Which way to go?
Where's it gone? I was wondering what was happening to that little bereft triangle of land that just seems to be left where the drive curves there, straight ahead beyond his fence where he's delineated the driveway, but there's a derelict area in the middle there, and it's an absolute mess. There's pipework, there's dustbins, there's an absolute mess.
Middle, that area is covered. That's outside of this particular application site, so that will be covered under the details approved under the conversion schemes, which I don't have to hand. But right, yeah, that's not
it's not a happy sight as far as I'm concerned. But thank you very much for trying to fill the gaps for me. Thank you.
Any other councillors have questions for the officer at this point? No. Okay, thank you. I'll ask Councillor Lawrence to come forward then, please.
That's not a very satisfactory answer.
No, I probably don't need a microphone. I wouldn't really use one. I can just...
Well, certain people use hearing loops, so it would be a good idea. And you have 3 minutes starting now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to be very quick then. There's kind of 3 points that local people have deep concerns of. One, 3 material points, I'd say. One, the increase in traffic. What you don't realise is that part of Crown Road is down from the shop. That part of it gets very congested. So any increase in traffic on that part of the Crown Road is of local concern, and and why people object to this particular development. To note that the garage and it looks as if it's 3 parking spaces for that particular house, which would then give it the potential to convert that garage later, which is a concern. But the main concern really, I think, is the increase in flood risk, because what is difficult to see there is that actually the storm water, surface water drainage from this particular property and all of Crown Road goes and flows into Levershore Close and into Camping Beck, directly into the Bure Valley. For that reason, Bure River. For that reason, it is a concern on nutrient neutrality, because it has a direct route into the Bure, which is part of the one of those catchments identified. And there is a significant flooding concerns on surface water for Levershore Close. And in Google Maps, you won't see the drainage system that connects in. You can see it on street maps, but not on Google Maps. So, and the only way that you can see the surface water sewage system, drainage system that this connects into is you have to pay for that. And I think we saw it in a development in the Mead that was linked to Mead Close when that was presented years ago. So it's the kind of, this means that we are losing the area that allows for surface water absorption in part of the village, and we directly increase the amount of hard surface with the additionality of this particular dwelling. And that won't, that consideration for just sort of for a SUD, for a soakaway, is not going to be sufficient to deal with the flood risk that this potentially could provide. And then the third point is that it's going to lead to a definite increase in nutrient load. Our sewage system in Buxton pumps up to Tuttington. There has been no, what is this from the letter we have? So we have had no upgrade of the wastewater treatment works in Tuttington, which whole of Aylsham goes into Tuttington as well. So I would, so those are the kind of points presented, and why we don't want this, why we object, and just to emphasise that it's very difficult to estimate sort of the impact, the cumulative impact on the surface water. In December 2021, the bottom half of Levershore Close was flooded. And it's not just the houses, well, it's not the problem with the houses, but it's the accumulation of the saturation of the soil in that part of Levershore Close means that the water table goes up and people have sewage coming out of their toilets. They may not have their houses flooded, but they've got sewage coming through their toilet system and they can't use them. And then and they've also got that whole discomfort and a problem. And that was actually at Christmas time. So I don't feel that this, and increasing the, and removing the garden area, so important for surface water absorption and nutrient absorption, is the right way to go. So that's my points. Any questions? Happy to take. Have I taken 3 minutes?
Thank
or
you.
am I good?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Did I say 3? It should have been 5, shouldn't it? That was 5 minutes. That was 5. I did say 3, but you actually had 5. It should have been 5. Sorry. I'm thinking of the town council where it's 3. Right. Councillors, do you have any questions for Councillor Lawrence? Yes, please.
Has somebody changed these? Oh, just not used. Right, I'm on. Right. Lovely, thank you. Good morning, committee. Good morning, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Lawrence, for your presentation. I just wondered specifically the nutrient neutrality issue and the fact that the drainage system was yet, the details of the drainage system were yet to be submitted. Does that not give you and your residents some assurance that actually complying with our policies, and I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, Helen, is that actually any development should produce as an end result a betterment of the drainage on site compared to what it was before. So I'm fairly certain that whatever SUDs are proposed, that it's probably going to, in terms of, surface water drainage from that site, is actually going to make things easier, because that, I believe, is the intention of planning policy. Chairman? Thank you.
Indeed.
As far as surface water is concerned, and then obviously the development has to make sure it doesn't actually exacerbate any existing problems. It has to deal with its own surface water to required standards. So that's what we'll be looking forward as far as the drainage condition is. This site doesn't have to address other issues within the area, but it mustn't contribute to it, and it must deal with its own surface water drainage.
Can I respond? Do I get to respond, or is it just a question?
Yes, you can respond. Yes.
Thank you. I think a part of my concern is the fact that not all of this information is easily available, and very often when it's not where they're doing the calculations. That sort of the information is as accurate as possible, but also I suppose it's kind of the cumulative effect. So although they may not have consideration of what the cumulative effect is on Levershore Close as a flood vulnerable village identified with its own flood risk and vulnerability report, I think it's my role to just highlight that to the committee and for you to consider that in the deliberations that you're considering, basically.
Yes, thank you. The officer's just got a bit more information.
Yeah, I think hopefully to provide some reassurance really on the way that we assess the SUDS proposals. So any new dwelling or new development, when we're calculating it, for example, if we take this one as a soakaway, the soakaway must be able to deal with the 1 in 100 year flood event plus 40% additional output to cover climate change impacts. So in theory, that should be 40% more than we expect now to cover what we are going to expect in the future. And a 1 in 100 year flood event is quite significant in terms of rainwater volume. So the inputs are calculated from the climate data. The volumes are then calculated from the roof areas and the volume of water that we expect. You add the 40% on to gain the extra volume as mitigation. And then in this particular case, as a soakaway, that should go into the ground, and that prevents any surface runoff. And it's you mentioned the surface water drainage. SUDs explicitly at the moment, unless there is exceptional circumstances, prohibit drainage into existing surface water sewers, because the whole intention is to slow down the water to not reach the river with the rest of the flood. So if you get a very high rainfall event, it's supposed to, so the crates for the soakaways will hold the water back and feed it into the system slowly, so it doesn't overwhelm the system in an event. So as Helen said, obviously we can't address through this what the existing situation is. There may well be a fast running sewer that does run water from other properties down there, but this one wouldn't contribute to that by design of that drainage system.
Thank you. Councillor Hempsall.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We also, considering the nutrient neutrality question that Councillor Lawrence raised, I know that we all recently received a letter from the Chief Planner that maps out next steps in addressing nutrient neutrality in our planning authority. Could the officer?
We're still on questions to Councillor Lawrence at the moment.
But it's
yeah.
quite. But I think it's addressing those questions, please.
Yeah, okay.
Chairman.
Officer Mellis will answer that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hemsel. Yes, we've still got an outstanding issue with how we deal with nutrients neutrality, but the recent advice from the ministerial statement and the Chief Planning Officer letter has now put a duty on Natural England to produce some mitigation measures for catchment areas, together with our own work we're doing with our consultants, together with individual developers also addressing it on site. So there is a change in direction, should mean that we can issue permissions sooner, and those mitigation measures will be required to have a credit attached to a planning permission. We're not in a position to issue this one yet or any of other permissions for new dwellings, but the speed of how we're getting to our mitigation measures is actually speeding up, together with a statutory duty through a legislation change for wastewater treatment bodies, and for us it will be Angling Water, to improve wastewater treatment to deal with nutrients neutrality post 2030. So there has been a lot of movement on that, which is good news. We're still not in a position to issue this one, but there will be a catchment-wide area mitigation strategies that Natural England will be coming up with, together with us working on the consultants that we've employed to look at the Norfolk catchment area as a whole. So it is good news in speeding it up, but we're not quite there yet.
Councillor Beadle.
Thank you. If I ask Councillor Lawrence as a local member, she states that there's problems elsewhere in the parish with sewage backing up into the toilets. Now, presumably, any sewage system for this site will actually go into the village sewage system, will contribute to the effect of backing up into toilets elsewhere in the parish. Could I ask Councillor Lawrence, is this a lack of capacity at the sewage farm, or is it a lack of capacity of the pipe from the parish to the sewage farm?
As far as I understand, our sewage is pumped to the Tuttington sewage treatment works, which is the one that is for the whole of Aylsham. So it's to full capacity and has not been upgraded yet. As far as I understand, the actual backing up is more to do of toilets is more to do with the whole of, well, basically the Levershore Close is where the old lake used to be, is an old valley, and therefore the storm water, it's an accumulation of various things. So the storm water discharge overflows into the drainage drains that are at the back of Levershore Close that they all go into, increases the saturation of all of the soils at that bottom part of Levershore Close. And that higher water table means that the drains and the sewage systems that's existing gets flooded out. So there's no drainage out of it. And that's what backs up the water. So it's a difference between practice and theory. And people's experience currently is that the sewage system, the surface water drainage system, is not adequate for dealing with current and even less than 100 year flood. So 2021 was not a 100-year flood, and we still have those issues, and without this extra development. So our understanding of a revisional approval was that there would be no increase in the overall footprint of the development going forward, and that was part of the concerns with this conversion. So yeah, that's the complexity. So my sense is, at the moment, I don't know, because I'm not a sewage expert. I'm a land drainage, sort of land and water management specialist. So I don't have the sewage drainage pattern. It's actually quite difficult to get by. You have to pay for it. So I'm not part of that professional, so I don't get that easy access to that. So I can't tell you with pure certainty on that. But that's the experience, the difference with the experience and the practice, and the fact that not all this information is sort of, unfortunately, within the hydrological models that are used. So there's an underestimation of the surface water flooding that occurs in the village.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have a question for Councillor Lawrence, please? No, thank you. Well, Councillor Lawrence, if you'd like to retake your seat over there, please, and turn your microphone off, please.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, over to you, councillors. Councillor Beadle.
Yes, Councillor Lawrence, I did put her on the spot there because I was asking a technical question to which she is not qualified. Could we have an answer to the same question from one of the officers, please?
In relation to the foul sewage, fortunately, we don't see necessarily the technicalities behind it. The Anglian Water would have the statutory duty to take the sewage from the site for any new development connected to the main sewer, and in determining a planning application, we must assume that that body does their job, and therefore, where it's proposed, they have a requirement to connect to the main sewer if it's within a certain distance of it. So they have to if it's there, and then it's really Anglian Water's job to manage their network, and it's outside of the controls of the planning permission to affect that.
Thank you. Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I, for clarity, because I didn't quite follow and understand all the details that the planning officer made in regard to the nitrate provision, but do I understand that if this committee does approve this application, that as you list in the conditions here, surface water drainage, do I understand that you said that it wouldn't actually be approved to the applicant until you had received the final details as to what the regulations are? And the second question is, are you quite clear that the points that were made by Councillor Lawrence have been covered in your explanation of how it would be dealt with? Thank you.
Yes, so that surface water condition, depending on when we get the full details, will either be requiring it to be done before any construction above foundation level, or if they get it to us, and I understand they were out on site at the weekend doing the infiltration testing to work out how big the crates needed to be for the soakaways. If we get that up front, then we will get a technical document with the size of the soakaway, the position, with the information that demonstrates that it can take that rainfall, with the calculation showing the 1 in 100 year and the 40% addition on it. So we will have that. We've got a water management officer internal as well that we can cross-reference that. So as a technical side, so it's not just necessarily us as a planning officer that does it. We've got technical backup internally as well, and that will have to be done before they get any further than laying foundations.
And can I understand that in your analysis, you covered and understood all the queries that were raised by Councillor Lawrence?
Yes, I think on my understanding, the significant issues down in closer to the valley, there's no denying there are issues there. But in view of what we can do on this application, I'm satisfied that the proposal that we have in front of us will not adversely impact that situation by virtue of that condition.
Councillor Adams, followed by Councillor Hempsall.
Yeah, I think we've sort of gone off course a bit here in some respects, because we are just looking at this particular planning application, not what the wider problems are within Elsham or in the surrounding areas. That is a matter for Anglian Water. We haven't got representatives from Anglian Water here to answer those questions, and I wouldn't expect our officers to be experts on such matters, to be honest with you. So having heard everything, I cannot see any reason why we should not give planning permission for this. And so therefore, on that basis, Chairman, I move that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Folger. Thank you. Councillor Hempsall.
Yeah, Chairman, sorry, I'm a bit behind the curve. I was still on questions to officers. I must have blinked. But so my question is, it's relating to the SUDs. You mentioned in your presentation that the technical detail of the sustainable drainage system was yet to be submitted. Are you confident that there is a technical solution that can be accommodated on the application site that will satisfy the requirements you've set out? Because sometimes, sites can be too small and you literally can't put SUDs in because there's just not space, or you need to go do it. So what I'm asking is there a technical solution that the applicant can adhere to that will satisfy the conditions?
So yes, if I come up, this map probably shows it the best. So where we've got a proposal that's looking at soakaways, the first line of assessment is there sufficient space to accommodate them? With this one, that's got to be out away from the dwelling, and it's also got to be away from the trees. So we've got the tree protective fencing around here. So essentially, we've got the space to the west here and to the north in which that could fit. So I'm satisfied that in relation to the size of the dwelling, there is sufficient space to fit it there. Given I've had sort of preliminary information to suggest that the percolation testing has been successful, so that is viable. But even if it wasn't, and they discovered clay or something like that that prevented infiltration, there are technical solutions such as rainwater harvesting. They can put water butts on the dwelling and the garage to slow that water down. So there are other methods that could come forward to resolve that and satisfy that condition.
So the technical detail of that, if water butts are required and the maintenance of them, is that going to be covered separately in a condition, or how will that be addressed, please?
This drainage information should be accompanied or within a drainage strategy, which will provide ongoing maintenance within that, because soakaways, for example, will need some form of maintenance going on to make sure that connections don't get blocked and things like that. So that side of things is contained within that document.
Can I just confirm that condition, so the details that we get for the scheme to be carried out as per that SUD scheme will be a condition on the permission? So they will have to be carried out as per the details we approve by way of a condition. So it will be to be carried out as per all the details submitted. So yes, that will be covered.
Chairman, can we move to the vote, because we've had a long discussion on this? We seem
Indeed.
to be going
Are
around
there
in
any
the-
last comments before we go to the vote? Just Councillor Beadle, please.
Yes, Chairman. Even if we accept everything about the stormwater disposal, it doesn't address the issue of foul water ending up in the sewage system elsewhere in the parish and adding to the problems of sewage backing up elsewhere in the parish. So I'd like to propose an amendment, Chair, to the resolution, and it is that this council writes to Anglia Water expressing concern that the foul sewage generated on this site may exacerbate the problem of foul water backing up into toilets elsewhere in the parish.
Okay, does the proposer accept your amendment?
No, I do not.
No.
Chairman, I don't think it's our job.
Do you have a seconder for your amendment? Right, can we take a vote on the amendment then, proposed by Councillor Beadle and seconded by Councillor Karimi? All those in favour of the amendment? 2, and those against? Right, so
3. Sorry, could you please show of hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Chairman.
So the amendment fails. So we go back to the proposal, which is to approve in accordance with the officer's recommendations, proposed by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Folger. All those in favour, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Chairman.
And against?
1, 2, Chairman.
2. Okay, thank you. That's carried. Thank you. Right. Next item. Application 2022-20775 Eastgate, Taven Park Avenue, Taven. Councillor Fox will present. Officer Fox, sorry. Thank you.
Sorry, just got
Okay, we'll resume. Thank you. Application number 2022-20775 Eastgate, Taveram Park Avenue, Taveram. Officer Fox will present. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and sorry for the delay. Small technical hitch there. This is application 2022-0775 Eastgate, Taveram Park Avenue, Taveram, for variation of condition 6 of planning permission 2018-1142 in relation to the landscaping scheme. The application is being reported to committee at the request of Councillor Kelly for the reasons set out in section 4.2 of the report. The application is seeking retrospective planning permission for changes to approved landscaping of the site, this being the replacement of the front boundary hedge with yew in lieu of the agreed species, which is viburnum. So I just go through the slides. The application site is one of 6 dwellings at the end of Taveram Park Avenue, which is in the grounds of Langley School. And as you can see, it's enclosed by existing woodland. Taveram Park Avenue is a private drive, and this property is the first one of that development. This slide is showing where the replacement hedging has been planted, the green parts on there. The curved section going to the east is actually a line of trees and forms the garden of the application site, but is not actually enclosed by anything, so it's open with just trees. As you can see, this is looking towards the application site and those trees that I've just mentioned on the boundary. You can see beyond the trees there's a wicker fence which forms the rear garden of the property. This is the front of the property showing the yew hedge in situ, 2 sections either side of the driveway, and then it forms around the corner down the driveway with the adjacent property, which is shown on this photograph here. Another close-up of the hedge, another part of the hedge. This is showing the land to the west of the application site. There should actually be planting in that stretch there, and if you look a little bit further around the corner, the whole of this boundary here, all the way round to there, should be enclosed with the same sort of hedging, so an evergreen viburnum hedge, which would formally establish an enclosed boundary around that whole site. And just for an example of the 2 different types of hedge, I've just provided a photograph. You've got examples of the type of hedge that was approved at the top, and then a yew hedge screen in the bottom photograph. So both evergreen hedges can be easily maintained. One has white flowers, one has yellow flowers. They're very similar in appearance overall. So I will just go back to that photograph there for reference. The issues for consideration are primarily the impacts on the character and appearance of the area. Development was approved subject to a landscaping condition, the details of which are set out in the report section 5.3 to 5.5. The northern and western boundaries of the development as a whole were to be planted with evergreen hedging, and once established, the hedging would enclose these boundaries, as I've already stated. Neighbours are concerned that the change of species will alter the character of the area. However, it is considered that the evergreen nature of the approved landscaping and the replacement with yew hedging are not dissimilar and will not have a significant impact. Highway safety concerns have also been raised as set out in the report at section 5.14. The yew hedge is planted in the same place as the approved landscaping. While this has had a more instant visual impact, once established, the approved hedging would have had the same impact. The accesses are onto a private drive, and highways raised no concerns. Accordingly, the proposals are considered acceptable and approval is recommended subject to the conditions as listed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer, please? Councillor Hempsall.
Chairman, thank you. This is a technical question. Does yew not offer greater biodiversity enrichment to viburnum? That's the impression I've been given all along.
I think they have similar potential for diversity. They provide nesting sites. They provide a denser understory for small mammals, and also provide plenty of flowers for insects. So they're similar. The viburnum have a similar sort of impact. It's not so dense foliage. It does have flowers for insects, but they are very similar in effect.
So just a question moving back, because I wasn't there when this original application was approved. Was there a specific reason why viburnum was suggested? Because clearly, we have to support habitats, etc. So was there a specific reason that there's a particular species that relies on viburnum specifically to survive, or is this just an evergreen screen?
It is just an evergreen screen. The species wasn't put in specifically for nature or ecology. It was just an evergreen screen.
Any further questions for the officer, please? Councillor Karimi.
My concern with this application is a previous resident tried to do some landscaping, and he was told by Broadland he couldn't because of the condition on the site. This site has not even been in existence for more than a year with the residents moved in. This condition is on for 5 years. Why are we telling one resident, no, they can't do something, and then we're going to let this resident get away with not adhering to the conditions that are approved, which Broadland put on themselves? It seems that we're setting a precedent here, a dangerous precedent, that we put conditions on properties or on applications, and then someone can come along in the next year and say, no, the condition is not relevant anymore.
So when we obviously give advice, someone says, can I change my landscaping? We will say yes. Well, we will say, no, there's an approved landscaping scheme. You need to carry out any works in accordance with the approved landscaping scheme. It doesn't mean to say that someone can apply to vary that, and we will look at it on its own merits. So we gave the right advice, as in saying, can I change it? Well, no, there's an approved landscaping. They could apply to change that landscaping. In this case, it is a retrospective one. It brought to our attention that that wasn't in accordance with the approved landscaping scheme, and we're now considering it on its own merits. And for the reasons outlined in the report, we feel we can support the change, and therefore recommending approval to you.
So other residents can plant whatever they like on the...
No, I don't think that's what I said at all. They could apply to vary the condition as this person has on this site.
Right. Any further questions for the officer? Councillor Beadle.
Yeah, just to say, I seem to recall in the report somewhere, buried in the report, that it does actually say that the residents did actually seek advice from the council, and they were given advice that yes, they could change it, and then the council found that that advice was inaccurate, and therefore they had to submit a planning application to change it. But they did do the right thing. They did consult the council. The council gave the wrong advice, and therefore that's why the applicant is in this position of having to actually apply retrospectively.
And because the deer ate the original hedge. Yeah. Deer won't eat you.
Yeah.
Right. Any further questions?
Can I say, I noticed from a previous photograph that none of the trees have any branches with leaves on from about 3 foot down, and that's a good sign that deer are rampant.
Mm-hmm. Any further questions for the officer? Yes.
Can I just ask one thing? I presume we're going to approve this. Can we make a condition that it's not a very high hedge, that it's kept low to enhance the openness of the whole scheme? You don't want one house to have very high hedges and then the rest is open plan.
I believe that's already there, isn't it? Can the officer just reply?
The applicant has actually stated that they will keep the height of the hedge down to 2 metres in height. Yeah, but there were no conditions on the previous planning landscaping scheme to maintain the height of the hedging to a certain height, and viburnum by its nature can go up to 3 metres in height if maintained.
Can I just add? It's quite difficult controlling the height of hedges because actually we don't normally control the height of natural vegetation because people can grow, plant trees, plant anything in their front garden as a rule without consent, and they can grow it as tall as they like without obviously having to keep a maintained height. So it's really important that when we look at what we need to control and how, we have to remember what you can do without consent. And obviously we all might have hedges that we keep at different heights. It's entirely up to us how we maintain those because there are no restrictions on heights of fencing. I think in this case, if the applicant has said they're happy to maintain it at 2 metres, that would be reasonable, given there was no restrictions on the previous condition that said the hedging could grow as tall as it liked.
Thank you. Councillor Hempsel. Yes.
Chairman, can I just leap into there? If the previous species, viburnum, only grows up to 3 metres, then perhaps that was the reason why it was specified in the condition for it. So I don't think that limiting the hedge by condition at that particular height is unreasonable, because perhaps that was the reason why viburnum was specifically chosen for that reason. You can grow quite high, say, 30 feet high, whereas if viburnum is kind of self-limited at 3 metres, then that's significant. So I don't think it's unreasonable to write that in, especially if the applicant is happy for the hedge height to be limited at 2 metres.
Okay, any further questions for the officer? No. Over to you, councillor, then, please. I'd like to move officer's recommendation in that case. Seconded by councillor Fisher. Any further discussion? No. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Chairman.
Against? 1, 2. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Right, we're now on to appeals on page 34.
Thank you, Chair. There's nothing to report other than we've had the 2 appeals lodged as outlined on page 34, and we obviously will duly report on the outcome of those in due course.
Okay, any comments? Duly noted. Thank you very much. So that concludes the meeting. Thank you all very much for attending.